Hi, my name is Anastasia Danilova from the University of Bonn. Me and my colleagues investigated different screening questions for software developer studies, and today I will share our results with you. You can find all the details on our work as well as the questions in the publication. Recruiting professional programmers for studies in sufficient numbers is challenging. There are different possibilities to recruit developers for scientific studies. Examples for recruiting are use Stack Overflow or forums, recruit over GitHub, social media, social events or meetup groups, as well as recruiting over newsletters, and use recruiting services. Online platforms like Qualtrics or Clickworker offer recruiting services to help researchers with the recruitment of participants. We, the researchers, cannot verify how the online platforms recruit the participants and whether the participants really are developers. And there are some differences between conducting studies with end users and with programmers. Programmers often have to be rewarded with higher compensation. Participants without programming experience might try to participate in these developer studies to get the compensation. The answers of participants without programming experience can threaten the data quality of our developer studies. To assure the data quality, we formulated our main research question. Our main research question was, how can we exclude participants without programming skills from our dataset? First, we need to define programming skill. We define programming skill as the ability to use one's knowledge effectively and readily in execution or performance of a programming task. There are various examples for programming languages such as Java, Python, or C++, and usually a skill includes different overlapping phases such as knowledge acquisition, knowledge association, and autonomous task performance. To answer our main research question, we decided to establish a set of screening questions to filter participants without programming skill. We had different requirements for our screening questions: effectiveness, efficiency, robustness against cheating, and language independence. For effectiveness, we defined that questions need to rely on domain knowledge, which is programming in our case, and be difficult enough so that only programmers can answer them in a reasonable amount of time. For efficiency, we said that questions should consume as little time as possible, so the goal is to frame the question in a way that only programmers can answer them quickly and correctly. For robustness against cheating, we defined that the question should be difficult for participants without programming skill to answer correctly, especially by using online search engines or forums on which participants might exchange information about studies. Last but not least, our requirement was also that our question need to be language independent. So that means that they should work regardless of the programming languages the participants are skilled in. We started with a pool of questions, and after different iterations in which we consulted our researchers and developers, we reduced it to a pool of 16 multiple choice questions. The questions came out of 7 categories, which I will now present. First of all, programming language recognition, where we wanted to find out whether participants lie about programming languages they know. Basic knowledge about programming. Information sources, so we asked which information sources programmers usually use. We had number format questions. Finding errors, so we showed an error and wanted the participants to point to the line in the source code causing the mistake. we asked the question about algorithmic runtime on a small code snippet. And finally, we asked code comprehension questions. So what is the output of a code? So you might wonder, how does a screener question look like? So for example, we asked questions about programming languages. And then we asked questions about lesser known programming languages. We asked this question because we expected that non-programmers might simply select non-existent languages. Also, we asked questions about information sources. So for example, we asked the frequently used aid for programming, which is Stack Overflow. We also asked knowledge questions like, what is the description of an algorithm? For each of our questions, we had multiple choice answer options. We expected the developers to answer the questions correctly, and our expectation was that a person without programming experience wouldn't have the knowledge to answer these specific kind of questions without any help. Another example for a question was, pick all the powers of 2, and the whole set of questions can be found in our paper. To verify our questions and to establish an instrument which can be used for future studies, we choose the following process. We verified the questions with verified programmers first, so programmers who had already participated in programming studies and demonstrated their programming skill. After that, we tested the questions with non-programmers, for example, students from our study programs like economics, or Clickworkers without programming experience. We selected the best questions, meaning questions with a high correctness rate for programmers and a low correctness rate for non-programmers. And in the last step, we tested our question in a text scenario. We specifically gave a financial bonus for each correctly answered question to provide a further incentive in the text scenario for non-programmers to answer the questions correctly. The most effective questions were the code comprehension questions, but these were also the slowest. Here you will see an example for this. We had a code snippet, and here hello world is spelled backwards as an output. And then we asked the participants to select the returned value of the pseudocode. If time penalty is acceptable, we recommend using knowledge questions with a time limit, because our attack group demonstrated that easy knowledge questions can be looked up. However, with a time limit, we can challenge that. So examples for time limits are 30 or 60 seconds. A time limit can really make a difference here. So let's come to our recommendation. We recommend the use of screener questions for study targeting programmers, especially when no programming task is included. So for example, for online surveys with developers. Our most effective screeners were code comprehension questions. However, if possible, a time limit with knowledge questions is also fine. We surveyed a total of almost 250 people to find questions to filter participants without programming skill. And out of 16, we only tested 6 with attackers. So our takeaways are: use screening question whenever no programming task is included in the developer study, and test your screeners, because designing screening question isn't trivial, and we would not recommend using questions without testing them before. More details can be found in our publication, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, hi everybody. I think that we are online now for the Q&A session. You have seen the video of the work, and we have some almost 9 minutes and a half for questions. Anastasia Darinova is with us, so there are some questions in the chat that we have been already commenting. So let me start. Anastasia, with the first question that was the one related with the most effective screeners. Most effective screeners are detected through the use of code comprehensive questions. So the idea is why not focusing more on them. And sorry to forgot I introduced myself, Oscar Pastor, professor in the University Polytechnic of Valencia in Spain. I'm very happy to be here sharing this question. So, Anastasia, what about this question? What about this stronger use of code or comprehensive questions to detect more effectively screeners?
Yeah, so the code comprehension screeners, they were the most effective ones, but on the other hand, they take more time, and the developers also need more time. So it depends on what you are searching for. So, for example, if you have a really small online survey and you don't want your participants to spend a lot of time on your screeners, which are not the question you really want to ask,
Mhm.
but rather to filter for the correct participant, I would say that it's a trade off, you know. Sometimes it's better to ask simple questions combined with a time limit, so then the screeners take less time. It depends on your survey. So, therefore,
Okay, okay, thank you. It's clear. We have one question from the audience that you can see from Anastasia Virillo. It is, you are talking about a time limit, but that this affect the result? An experienced programmer can make a mistake in a limited time environment, and a beginner, on the contrary, can guess the answer. So, what about this?
this is a very good question. So, we suggested time limits, but we did not test them again with the developers. So, we looked whether developers were excluded with the time limits. But if you test it again with developers, it might have a different result because the developers would kind of get stressed maybe, and we will feature that in future work. But
Mhm.
still, I would say that so. But this is just an expectation. I think that for the easy questions, the developers were already beneath the time limit. You know.
Okay.
I hope
Thank
this answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, in any case, if I see any reaction from the author, you are invited to interact through the chat. Another question that is interesting is the question of what about considering and managing differences in programming skills? Have you faced this problem? Because okay, you are talking about identifying programmers, but we know it is the case that sometimes the skills are very different, and this could affect also any study that is that with the selected people. So, what about this problem?
So I would say that for this work, we try to establish the lowest threshold. You know, we want to exclude as few possible developers as possible. You know, so therefore, I'm sure there are differences in the levels, but we try to make it as easy as possible. So, because in related work, there are a lot of difficult questions where you filter for the best developers. But let's be realistic. In the real world, there are all kinds of different developers. So we want to study them all, you know, and therefore we try to put the threshold as low as possible for our study. We don't want to exclude unexperienced developers, you know. We
Hmm.
want them all, but we want to exclude participants who don't have any experience with developing, like with programming.
Okay, yes, I think that this is leading us to a kind of subsequent questions that was to me also interesting when I read the paper. Because you are assuming that programming skills in some way are precise enough to have a binary answer, either 1 or 0, programmer, non-programmer. Well, we know that is a problem in software engineering. People that have not a strong software engineering background or that have not followed at all a software engineering degree, they consider themselves to be professional programmers, or even people from other disciplines that are doing any basic course of programming, they consider themselves programmers. So this is generating the problem that is related to what you were talking about of how to be sure that a programmer is really a programmer, or that a non-programmer is really a non-programmer. So this, okay, I guess that your work is taking a binary perspective, but the reality seems to be putting some kind of fuzzy perspective in this binary view of what a programmer is. So my question is, well, would considering that being programmer, non-programmer is not so clearly defined in practice, could this affect what you have concluded in your work?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's all a question of definition. So, for example, we asked, so we expected questions like translating binary numbers and so on to be good questions. But when we asked developers who are not computer science students anymore, we saw that the binary questions, for example, were really difficult for the developers. So what I mean to say is it's all kind of difficult to say which questions are really, necessary.
Okay, Anastasia,
And it's kind of a definition question.
Yes, I see something that could deserve a longer discussion. We have 2 more minutes and there are 2 more questions from the audience. Let's see if we can answer them. First one from Tapaji today. How many questions do you suggest should be asked to have a statistically significant chance of excluding non-programmers?
That depends on your survey, I would say. But I suggest at least one. But you could also include 3 or 2. In our paper, we gave different recommendations also in the supplementary material with time limits, for example. So it depends. For example, one code comprehension question would be enough. Like it's my recommendation. Or if you want easier question, you can combine them, like 2 knowledge questions with a time limit, for example.
Okay, seems to me that an issue here is to evaluate the strength and the quality of the questions, because this is important. But well, it's a clear and good point. The last question, if we are in time before the Claudia just put us out of the game. So it's from Anastasia Bililo again. And am I correct in understanding that additional questions need to be added to the main survey? Will this cause additional complications since the size of the survey can affect the number of people who want to take it?
Yeah, for sure. Therefore, this is the reason why, for example, a code comprehension question could be difficult. If you only ask like 3 questions and have a big screener question, it might be difficult. So therefore, we suggest also using simple question like where do you find your information when programming, like on Stack Overflow. A developer would click on it immediately, and when the survey is still like short. So surveys are so time is a big issue in online surveys because it's costly. So therefore, we suggest different questions. So if you already have a big survey and you are
10
paying for it,
seconds, Anastasia.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are just.
So yeah.
I think that we are mostly done. You know that you are invited to join the author in the discussion room. Thank you very much, everybody. We continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.